In the last video, part 2, when discussing YAHUAH's Torah, we were introduced to our Father, YAHUAH, the Most High. I truly was blessed by making that message because it felt like a pure message of love. True worship of YAHUAH brings peace and joy. And as I made that video, that was exactly what it brought me. This message about his Torah is extremely important because of how falsely we have been taught about YAHUAH and his law today. We are taught to be lawless. We are taught that we do not need to honor or regard his Torah, that this whole section of the Bible is pretty much done away with today. I rebuke that lie in the name of YAHUSH. As we have gone over his Torah over the last 2 videos, there was nothing burdensome or hard to do. Nothing legalistic that says we are earning our salvation. We are just learning about how our Father wants to be loved and honored. We're learning more about what he tolerates and what he doesn't, how he wants us to love him, and how we do this is following and obeying him. This is not legalistic, it is just love. By doing this, it brings us into a more complete, easily defined relationship with him that is biblically based and not centered around ourselves, but centered around him. Now, as we continue to follow him, one thing that brings a lot of questions and confusion are his feast days, his appointed times. In Christianity, everyone celebrates Jesus' birthday on December 25th, and the resurrection of Jesus on a date defined by the spring equinox having nothing at all to do with the Bible. They celebrate paganism. None of it is biblical, and as we separate ourselves from these false traditions, we often wonder, well, what can we celebrate? Are we not to do anything? And the answer to that is a very big no. He has given us times to celebrate. We don't celebrate those pagan holidays, but we have been given biblical feasts where we are to celebrate and remember, and it is biblical and it brings us joy. These are the times that the devil hates, so he has spread much confusion and hate around them so that we do not honor these times. But guess what? We all happily celebrate that pagan stuff. The devil will shut the world down to have everyone celebrate him, while he does not want us to know about Yah's appointed times at all. I'm done with all that, and whoever wants to choose Satan and his system, that's on them. But as for me, in my house, we will serve YAHUAH. So with serving him, we must learn about his feast. This subject is an important one because it brings us into more alignment with YAHUAH and helps us truly understand him better. We are going to start to understand YAHUAH's appointed times, his feast days. And with this understanding, I hope that more of us come into a stronger, more defined, obedient relationship with the Most High, Yah. Let's begin. Okay, so before I start explaining his feast days and appointed times, I just want to make this clear. I am not an expert on this. I have not done this teaching yet because I have still been learning and I know there is still a lot more for me to learn. But this topic cannot be put aside any longer. There may be better people that can explain this topic as they have been following his Torah longer. I am one that came out from the false understandings of Christianity and have been searching our Father's word for a more biblical, obedient relationship. Every year I get better, praise Yah, and I still have a ways to go. So depending on who you are, this may be where you are, and hopefully my experience can help you. Or perhaps you may be more seasoned and it may not do as much for you. Whoever you are, just understand that all we are trying to do is come back to a better understanding of our Father and his appointed times. Christians have been celebrating unbiblical festivals for centuries while ignoring what he has actually declared. I'm done with all that. Those of us who are going back to the basics, which is his word and his commands, must now come to him in more truth and more understanding. Now let me also cover this. As we discuss these appointed times, we undoubtedly move to the question of when and what are the dates? When do we celebrate this and when do we celebrate that? One major reason for my struggle in this subject is the lack of unity in this discussion. There is unfortunately a great deal of people that have their own views of the calendar and how we are to calculate time. Many people who truly mean well, so I do not criticize any of you. I am just saying that there is a great deal of confusion and less unity, and that is because Satan has changed our time. We are following a Roman calendar, not a Hebrew calendar, and even with the Hebrew calendar used today, it is based upon modern Hebrew, and I do not trust it or regard it. I mean, they literally have changed their new year. I don't follow any of it. What I'm saying is that there's confusion around the calendars. And as you may ask about a date, you may disagree with my answer and the calendar I use. I personally have not taken the time to go back and understand the miscalculation with our time. I think back to the movie The Matrix, in which I use as a metaphor all the time. When Neo woke up in the real world and Morpheus told him about the time, he said, "You think it is the year this, when it's actually closer to this year. We don't truly know the year." The reason why there is so much confusion is because Satan has changed the times as Messiah prophesied. I do not know personally who it is I should follow when they speak about the calendar specifically, because I have not yet taken the time to go back and truly understand all the changes. That is an extensive topic that I need to go into. What I know for certain is that I will not stake anything to this Gregorian calendar. I only use it in a general sense because everyone in the world uses it, so it helps with communicating. But in regards to YAHUAH's appointed times and feasts, I try not to use it. I do not believe Satan will mark truly when we should remember and honor YAHUAH. So the point I am getting at is, please do not argue about the calendar. If there is something you'd like to share, please do so. But please do so in love. If what you are led to share later turns into pride, it will easily be seen that whatever you are presenting is not based in truth. I hope I made this clear. I do not seek division or contentions because Satan has confused and manipulated time. We can't get past that. I know our Father knows this, and I believe that He truly finds honor and love with us doing our best to serve Him despite our condition in this world. And we're learning how to be biblically aligned with Him. When He gathers us, He will bring all things and make all things right. Okay, so now that that is out of the way, let's talk about His feast days. To start this discussion, we must start in Leviticus chapter 23. Verses 1 and 2 says, "And YAHUAH spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Yasharel and say to them, The feast of YAHUAH, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, these are my feast." So as we go through this, please understand these following instructions are for all of the people. They're not just for the priest. The feast of YAHUAH literally means appointed times of YAHUAH. These are specifically appointed holy days ordained, meaning ordered, and consecrated to, meaning honoring. These are specifically anointed holy days ordained by and consecrated to YAHUAH. Holy convocations were sacred assemblies of all the people called together at the appointed times by the priest. For instance, the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the Feast of Tabernacles lasted 7 and 8 days, respectively. The first and the last day of each were holy meetings. The days between were part of the holiday, though there were no special meetings on them. You can just imagine a gathering of a nation coming together and celebrating and worshiping Yah, being in fellowship and worship. We will go through each one of these feasts so you can understand it better. We will start here. The Sabbath. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is the Sabbath of YAHUAH in all your dwellings. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 3. It starts with the Sabbath. And maybe you just got confused because you thought that this was just a commandment to do no work on the 7th day. And let's be clear. Yes, it is a commandment, but it is so much more. When it is done properly, it is a blessing. If we all were to practice this command, we would have such unity in our homes and in our families. One thing that I have heard modern Jews say is that they don't care about our holidays because they have this celebration every week. One reason why people love Christmas and Easter is because of the way it brings family together. But if this Sabbath command was practiced the way it was intended, there would be no need or real push for those pagan holidays. Let me explain why. Shabbat is the Hebrew word for Sabbath. Besides us not working and resting, it is also a weekly feast. It is not something attached to the temple or requiring pilgrimage or a journey. The word Shabbat comes from the Hebrew word shavat, which literally means to cease. One of the activities that was a part of Yasharel was that on this day, all pilgrimages or long walks ceased. They went to the assemblies, yes, but they would cease from work and they would rest on the 7th day. It is included in the feast because it is an appointed time of YAHUAH that we rest refocus, and regather ourselves for the next week. One big part of the Sabbath is the Sabbath meal. This was the most frequently observed feast in ancient Yasharel. And as you understand it, you can understand why. It made people stop and rest. It would make them remember YAHUAH and then be with their family. The Sabbath begins on the 7th day of the week. The way a day actually starts is at sunset. So my family would enjoy a Sabbath meal on Friday evening. Now, Sabbath meals are not something recorded in the scriptures, but being that it is recorded in the times of his feast days, and during the Sabbath we are not to kindle a fire, it is easily assumed that this Sabbath meal, prepared before the Sabbath begins, was a big deal in Yasharel. In honoring the Sabbath, we do no work, and we rest, and we remember YAHUAH while we fellowship with our family. When we actually honor this command, you will see that it is a wonderful blessing, especially in this Babylonian system where wealth and greed are always prevalent in the minds of the masses. Honoring this command forces us to stop and rest and refocus ourselves weekly. We can take a break from this world and enjoy what truly matters in our lives. It is a refreshing break, and it is something that has blessed me since I started observing it. It is not a burden. It has only blessed me and my family. I personally needed this command because if I was not forced to stop, I never would, and I would burn myself out. The Sabbath is a day set apart that we rest. Our Father knows what's best for us, and if we obey Him, our lives will be better. If you have family, it is a great practice to have Sabbath feast. Back in the day, families, we used to have Sunday dinners. These were things that used to help keep families together. On Sunday, families would come together and eat a big meal. They also went to church on Sunday too. They did not recognize that what they were practicing was a sort of Sabbath day, but they were. They just did it on what was the first day instead of the 7th day, showing dishonor and rebellion unknowingly. But the practice, it was still there, and families that did this stayed together. The Sabbath meal is no different. Now, in regards to the Sabbath, here are some rules and laws that we should regard. First, of course, we must rest and do no work. Work shall be done for 6 days, but the 7th day shall be holy for you, a Sabbath of rest to YAHUAH. Whoever does any work on it shall be put to death. Exodus chapter 35, verse 2. That's how serious it was. It is a Kodesh, a holy gathering. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is the Sabbath of YAHUAH in all your dwellings. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 3. The next rule is that we shall light no fire. You shall kindle no fire throughout your dwellings on the Sabbath day. Exodus chapter 35, verse 3. Stay in your place. See, for YAHUAH has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. Exodus chapter 16, verse 29. Also, there's no cooking. Then he said to them, this is what YAHUAH has said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to YAHUAH. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourself all that remains, to be kept until morning. That's Exodus chapter 16, verse 23. Most people have a problem with the Sabbath because they don't like rules. They don't like people telling them what they can and cannot do. And they much rather deal with doctrine that tells them that they don't have to follow certain things our Father has said, instead of learning how our Father wants us to be and living accordingly to that. If you have grown up in Christianity and never honored the Sabbath, I will admit it can be a transition. But after you start to observe it, you will not regret it. If your life currently does not allow you to not work on the Sabbath day, speak to YAHUAH about it and let Him guide you. I am just explaining what He has said and what He has declared. These lawless times are a challenge, and I do not judge anyone. I just recommend moving from a lawless mindset that you do not have to honor this command etched in stone and go back to recognizing the Sabbath day. And let me also make this point and make it clear. Let's be clear that Gentiles should observe the Sabbath too. I know that this is one of those things where Gentiles want to play that card and say, because they're Gentiles, they don't need to observe this. But this thought is incorrect. Let's take it to Scripture. And the sons of the foreigner who join themselves to YAHUAH and to serve them, and to love the name of YAHUAH, to be his servants, everyone who keeps from defiling the Sabbath and holds fast my covenant, even them I will bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. That's Isaiah chapter 56, verses 6 and 7. It clearly says that those that are accepted by Yah are those who join to him and keep his covenant and does not defile the Sabbath. So you do not want to be one that does the opposite. This is what is prophesied when Isaiah was prophesying about Yahushua being a light to the Gentiles, granting them salvation. Do not think that you can come into covenant with Yah and ignore his ways. Just read it for yourself. The point is simple. Keep the Sabbath. Rest and remember YAHUAH. Enjoy your family as well. Okay, let's keep going. The next appointed time is Passover. These are the feasts of YAHUAH, holy convocations which you shall proclaim at their appointed times. On the 14th day of the first month at twilight is YAHUAH's Passover. Leviticus chapter 23, verses 4 and 5. Speak all to the congregation of Yasharel, saying, on the 10th of this month, every man should take for himself a lamb, according to the house of his father, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of the persons. According to each man's need, you shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. Now you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Then the whole assembly of the congregation of Yasharel shall kill it at twilight, and then shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel of the houses where they eat it. Then they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire, with unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Do not eat it raw, nor boiled at all with water, but roasted in fire, its head with its legs and its entrails. You shall let none of it remain until morning, and what remains of it until morning you shall burn with fire, and thus you shall eat it. With a belt on your waist, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. So you shall eat it in haste. It is YAHUAH's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt on that night, and will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am YAHUAH. Now the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. So this day shall be to you a memorial, and you shall keep it as a feast to YAHUAH throughout your generations. You shall keep it as a feast by an everlasting ordinance. It's Exodus chapter 12, verses 3 through 14. And this is Passover. It's on the 14th day of the first month. In the year 2024, we celebrated it on March 24th. It is a day of memorial that we remember YAHUAH when he passed over Israel and struck the land of Egypt. It is a day that he showed his power to the world. It is a day that we must remember. I have made a specific video on this, so for time's sake, I will just leave a link to this video in case you want to learn more about it. It will be broken down to you in the video. Passover is a very important time and it should be remembered. Remember and keep the Passover. Celebrate this instead of Easter. Let's keep going. Next is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread to YAHUAH. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work on it, but you shall offer an offering made by fire to YAHUAH for 7 days. You shall do no customary work on it. That's Leviticus chapter 23, verses 6 through 8. It is spoken in more detail in the verses after he speaks about Passover in Exodus. Let's read. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall remove leaven from your houses. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Yasharel. On the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and on the 7th day there shall be a holy convocation for you. No manner of work shall be done on them. but that which everyone must eat, that only may be prepared by you. So you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. For on this same day I will have brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day throughout your generations as an everlasting ordinance. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread, until the 21st day of the month at evening. For 7 days no leaven shall be found in your houses, since whoever eats what is leavened, that same person shall be cut off from the congregation of Yasharel, whether he is a stranger or a native of the land. You shall eat nothing leavened, in all your dwellings you shall eat unleavened bread. Exodus chapter 12, verses 15 through 20. You see, this feast, it marked Yasharel's exit from Egypt. And Moses said to the people, remember this day in which you went out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. For by strength of hand YAHUAH brought you out of this place. No leavened bread shall be eaten. On this day you are going out in the month Abib. And it shall be, when YAHUAH brings you into the land of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall keep this service in this month. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a feast to YAHUAH. Unleavened bread shall be eaten 7 days, and no leavened bread shall be seen among you, nor shall leaven be seen among you in all your quarters. And you shall tell your son in that day, saying, this is done because of what YAHUAH did for me when I came up from Egypt. It shall be as a sign to you on your hand and as a memorial between your eyes, that YAHUAH's law may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand YAHUAH has brought you out of Egypt. You shall therefore keep this ordinance in its season from year to year. Exodus chapter 13, verses 3 through 10. So let's understand more. Why unleavened bread? To understand, you must go back and remember Yasharel's hasty departure from Egypt. Remember, Yasharel, Israel, they fled from their captivity with unleavened dough still in their kneading bowls, bound to their shoulders by their garments. As Exodus chapter 12, verse 39 explains, and they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were driven out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared provisions for themselves. They had to go, and so they took their bread with them. In Deuteronomy, Moses recalls this hasty departure, but he shifts the focus to the affliction Yasharel experienced as slaves in Egypt. You shall eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread with it, that is, the bread of affliction. For you came out of the land of Egypt in haste, that you may remember the day in which you came out of the land of Egypt all the days of your life. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 3. So what then is the biblical meaning of this feast? The meaning and purpose is to remember how YAHUAH delivered his people from their bitter experience of a long enslavement. One day they were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, the next they were free. As we keep this feast, we not only remember Yasharel's exodus from Egypt into freedom, but also our own deliverance from sin and death into the freedom to obey YAHUAH and serve in righteousness. What is the significance of leaven? You see, with rare exception, the laws of sacrifice in the Torah forbid the use of leaven. Like this, no grain offering which you bring to YAHUAH shall be made with leaven, for you shall burn no leaven nor any honey in any offering to YAHUAH made by fire. That's Leviticus chapter 2, verse 11. It is believed and said, I do not know how true it is, so please don't quote me, but it is said that leavened bread originated with the Egyptians. Leavened bread was made by taking a bit of old fermented dough and working it into new dough. The old yeast will cause the new dough to ferment and rise. Also, please know that leaven does not always symbolize sin. We know this because YAHUAH used leaven in one of his parables. Another parable he spoke to them, the kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of a meal till it was all leavened. Matthew chapter 13, verse 33. So we shouldn't just try to identify leaven as sin. We remember and keep this feast because of how fast YAHUAH works. Again, YAHUAH delivered his people from their bitter experience of a long enslavement. One day they were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, the next they were free. As we keep this feast, we not only remember Yasharel's exodus from Egypt into freedom, but also our own deliverance from sin and death into the freedom to obey YAHUAH and to serve in righteousness. The Apostle Paul reminds us, "Your glorying is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Therefore, purge out the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, since you truly are unleavened. For indeed Messiah, our Passover, was sacrificed for us. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth." 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 6 through 8. When keeping this feast, remember, it shall be as a sign to you on your hand and as a memorial between your eyes, that YAHUAH's law may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand YAHUAH has brought you out of Egypt. Exodus chapter 13, verse 9. So by keeping this feast, we remember the power of YAHUAH, and we keep his promises always at the forefront of our minds. And remembering this feast, it also reminds us just how fast YAHUAH works. Again, one day we're in our situation, and the next we're commanded to leave. If you understand his promises and are waiting for his time when he regathers us again, what many call the second Exodus, keeping this feast keeps you in remembrance of the importance of being ready to move when Yah calls us. One day we're in our situation, the next day we are out of here. We won't have time to make sure everything is ready. Nothing must occupy our attention in a way that leaves us unready to depart when he returns. We must be ready for the return of our King with the same effort the Israelites did that night. Bread dough strapped to their backs, shoes on, and staffs in hand. Like the ready Israelites, we must refuse to let anything keep us from being ready for Messiah's return as we are gathered back to our land as our Father has promised us. And that's what keeping this feast does. It helps us remember this. In keeping this feast on the 15th day of the first month, the day after Passover, we eat unleavened bread for a week. We remove all leaven from our home. Leaven is yeast. On the first and seventh day, if you're able, you do no work. You gather with your family and feast. When I say feast, it is a big meal. Those same big meals we used to do for Easter and Thanksgiving. This is what we do in these feasts. These are a blessing. Bring your family over. Read some scripture so they remember and understand. Pray together and fellowship while you remember Yah and his power. And that is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, I know that you probably want more, but we're going to have to stop here with the Sabbath, Passover, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. These are extremely important, and when you keep these as the word requires us, you will find that your relationship with the Most High begins to strengthen. We will cover the next feast next video. As we discuss these feasts, I want you to know that the only person that benefits from you not keeping these feasts is the devil. You want to fellowship with your family? Keep these feasts. You want to remember our Father and what he has done? Keep these feasts. I want you to realize that these feasts are actually in his word. You aren't making anything up. YAHUAH has appointed these times, and he has declared that we keep them. Step aside from any faith that tells you that you do not need to remember his appointed days. Think about the absolute nerve of anyone who claims to be a teacher of the word that has told you to ignore these days actually written in the word. And they actually teach you to celebrate traditions that are not written or commanded by scripture at all. We are living during the most turbulent times in the world, preparing for the Great Tribulation. If we're going to make it through and see our Father's kingdom, we must start serving him and living aligned to him and less aligned to this world. So it has been important that we reject traditions of men and start accepting biblical traditions that glorify our Father and keep his promises and covenant in the forefront of our minds. Keep the Sabbath. Remember and keep Passover. Celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You are now called to be in a more biblically defined, obedient relationship with the Most High. Again, please answer his call and align your life to his word. We need to prepare ourselves for him and be ready. So please, make sure that that is truly what you are doing. Be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay. Thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like this and share this video with others. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on the website truthunedited.com. As always, I would like to give a sincere thank you to all those who contribute and donate to this ministry. Your donations are a sincere blessing to this ministry, and they help very much. Thank you for answering Yah's call on your heart. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again everyone for watching. I love you all.